All right, guys, we'll go ahead and get started. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to TCRA's third and final Meet the Candidates meeting. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. My name is Tristan Strength, and I'm the Community Association Manager for TCRA. With me tonight is Concetta Givianpour, owner of Selective Management Services. So, what is TCRA? Trace Crossings Residential Association, also known as TRAC, is the homeowners association responsible for overseeing the shared interest, standards, and long-term health of the Trace Crossings community. TCRA manages the common area, enforces community guidelines, supports neighborhood improvements, and helps maintain property values and overall quality of life for all residents. Selective Management Services, often referred to as SMS, is the management company hired by TCRA to handle the day-to-day operations of the association. This includes assisting with communication, enforcing policies, coordinating maintenance, supporting the board of directors, and all things accounting, budgeting, and collections. As your community association manager, I serve as the main point of contact between you, the homeowners, vendors, and the board. The board of directors is a group of volunteer homeowners elected by the community to govern TCRA, and that's why we're here tonight. To meet the 6 candidates who have volunteered to serve on the board comprised of 5 open positions. We appreciate each candidate's willingness to step forward and serve our community. Here's how this evening's format will work. Each candidate will begin with a 2-minute introduction where they can share a bit about themselves. Following introductions, we will move into a structured question segment. Each candidate will be asked the same 3 pre-selected questions and will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. I will then ask questions submitted by homeowners. We will also leave about 30 minutes at the end of the meeting to open the floor for questions from you all. In doing this, we ask that everyone remain respectful and allow each candidate their full time to speak without interruption. Once again, thank you for participating and showing your support for the continued success of the community. Let's begin by giving our first candidate the opportunity to introduce themselves. Matt.
Good evening. I'm Matt Austin. I live in Scout Creek. We've lived there for 5 years now. I am a licensed general contractor, and I've served on the HOA board before. I served on there for 3 years, and I'm volunteering this just to help out the community.
Hi, my name is Steve Lawrence. My parents moved to Hoover in 1974. I've lived most of my life in Hoover. My wife and I grew up in Hoover. We have 3 kids. We live in Park Trace. We've lived in Park Trace about almost 5 years. I ran for city council, helped start Hoover News and Information, a Facebook group site. Don't hold that against me if you don't like it. I did it to basically myself and Steve McClellan to kind of help educate the community on different issues. And so I got 1 kid that goes to Auburn, 1 that goes to South Alabama, 1 that's a junior at Hoover High School. That's a little bit of background about myself.
My name is Mike Owsley. I bought the very first lot in Trace Crossings. I love this community. It's a wonderful place to live and raise your family. The community has definitely gotten older over the last few years. A lot of grandparents living in the community. When a long time ago it was a lot of young families with children. I'm a television producer as a profession. I work a lot with Alabama Public Television. I produce 6 different television shows with Alabama Public Television. I also do television shows in North Carolina and in Tennessee. And I have 1 son, and I'm married, and I think that's it.
Hi, I'm Susan Remick. I am from Knox Square. We are a relatively new neighborhood. We moved there 2 years ago. I believe Knox Square has been there 3 years. I'm retired now, and I was a elementary school principal, and in that position, I managed budgets for the school, I managed people, I managed students, I managed parents, I collaborated with the community, did a lot of similar things that I feel like this position will ask of its board members. I am a mother of three. All three of my children are in graduate school right now.
Good evening, Mark Toll. I've lived here in Willow Trace for the past 10 years and married, been very active in the past with, I've been a past president of a neighborhood HOA, vice president, board of directors for Renegade Condominiums up in Tallahassee. So a little partial to Florida State, president of a regional mall merchants association, county school board advisory council for a county school board, YMCA board of director, Boys and Girls Club. So I've been very involved, even dabbled in politics for a while. Figured out real quick that wasn't my cup of tea. And right now, currently semi-retired, run my company Southwinds Consulting, and kind of do a lot of traveling, and but backing that down hopefully here real quick. That's about it.
Thank you, candidates. I would like to make a note that we do have one sixth candidate on the way. He had a work emergency, but he'll be here soon, Alex Miller. So each candidate will be asked the same 3 pre-selected questions, and we'll have 3 minutes to respond to each question. So first question, and we can start with you, Mark. Why do you want to serve on the board of directors, and what are your qualifications?
Well, I think the qualifications probably were pretty, clear in the introduction of past history and past boards and HOAs served on. And I also owned a Chick-fil-A for 12 years, so have significant business experience. I want to be on the board really just to serve. Over these past 10 years, we've had a lot of growth here. We've had some uncontrolled growth almost. And I want to see all of the neighborhoods in Trace Crossings treated fair, firm, and consistent, right? Making sure that we're all adhering to and abiding by the covenants and the bylaws and the deed restrictions to keep property values up and continue to make it a very safe environment to live in, as well as, keep our property values up and make it one of the premier communities to live in here in Hoover.
I want to be on the HOA really for 3 reasons. First and foremost, as Mark said, I want to protect our property values. Not only maintain them, but also improve our property values. I believe that an HOA manages the landscaping, the amenities, and also the neighborhood standards. So I want to be on it for that reason. I also want to be on it to have representation in the decisions that are made. I want to be on it so that as a board member we can serve our neighborhoods and how our dues are spent, what rules and policies are developed, and then what vendors and contractors are hired. And then lastly, I want to be on the board because I want to build a sense of community for Trace Crossings. I want to make sure that we foster a strong and more connected community, and that we can do this through organizing social events as well as improvement projects as a whole.
I served on a board of directors for a condominium in Orange Beach, Regency Isle, from pre-construction through the first 5 years, 133 unit condominium. And I saw firsthand how money can be wasted and spent properly and get those things in line. So I think that USX turning this over to us is very, very important time. That's the reason I want to serve on this board, is to look at the financials and make sure that we are being as financially sound with our decisions and the money that we're spending. I hope we never have to raise our dues ever. I think we need to be smart and keep our reserves as high as possible never know what can happen, but I think there's been lots of abuse, and I hope that we can turn that around.
So I currently serve on the Park Trace Swim and Tennis HOA. My background is I spent over 30 years in commercial insurance and risk management. I'm a certified insurance counselor, certified risk manager, as well as an environmental risk manager. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to run is to solve problems. And so the lake issue, the trails around Park Trace, the various issues throughout the neighborhood, I'm not going to tell you that I understand all of them, because really it'll come down to getting to know more folks in the different neighborhoods and figure out what's important to them. But one of the reasons I wanted to run is to solve problems, and then two, I lived in Rossbridge when the developer handed over the HOA to the residents, and we were all elated at the time until the board got in and started spending money like it was growing on trees. And everyone's dues increased dramatically over a 2-year time period. And so this is a crucial point, because when we first take over, we need to get our arms around the finances, and then we need to be careful that we manage every dollar on a frugal, take care of it so we don't have to raise dues and do more long-range planning, but still meet the goals of the residents and accomplish that. So,
As I previously said, I was on an HOA board for 3 years. I joined that board to help vet subcontractors and the contracts that we were going through. They were struggling a bit with getting the results that they wanted. So I joined and helped vet that, and I think that's really what's going to take on with this new board, since we're going to have to vet all of our subcontractors that we currently have in place and do review the financials to determine, what's the best way to spend our money. And I think from my professional background, that's what I do every day, so I think that will help benefit the community, and we can move forward that way.
Thank you, candidates. Matt, we can start with you on this one. What do you believe is the most important issue facing TCRA, and why?
I think it would be the budget would be the first thing that we need to look at. We need to go through each line item a bit, check all the current subcontractors for what we have in place, make sure our dollars are being spent wisely. I'm sure there's some improvements throughout it that we can look into and fix that. So I would say that's going to be our first thing. Then we'll look through the covenants and see where everything stands, see what we can update, because I'm sure those are all outdated as they currently stand. So I'd say budget first and then those second, and then we can start prioritizing from there for what's best for the community.
yeah, he nailed most of them. So, the biggest thing is obviously the budget, figure out where the money's coming from. I'm going to be beating a dead horse over here, but find out where the money's coming from, look at it, analyze everything, try to figure out a better means of communication with the various, what works for different neighborhoods, and then really just look at every single line item and make sure that we know where the money's going, how it's being spent, so that we can communicate. I'm real big on transparency. I served on the mayor-elect's transition team on the finance, transparency, and risk management. So I'm a big believer in audited financials and just being very open with the public.
I agree, the financials need to be first and foremost in looking at contracts and what we have long-term and short-term, and what contracts that are good and working for us and what we can do better. I think security is a major issue for us. We need to make sure that our community is safe, and we need to work with Hoover PD to make sure, and possibly have cameras at the entrances, so that with license plate readers, so that Hoover PD can access that. Somebody's house gets broken into at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then they can look and see who's been in and out of that neighborhood and look at that. I think security is a big thing going forward for Hoover as a whole.
I also agree with what the three gentlemen to my right have said. I believe that budget and our bylaws and safety or security are all very important. I also believe that communication is essential. The 5 people that you vote on can do whatever they are going to do, but if we're not communicating to you, our power of doing what we need to do won't be as big as it would be if we had communicated to you. So again, I believe in communication and making sure that we involve as many community members as possible.
Yeah, not to be redundant. However, one of the biggest things I see is transparency, right? And especially when we talk about the budget, it's a fairly large amount of money that we have to spend. And, you know, how are we going to spend that? And how are we going to prioritize it? You know, thank God it looks like we're done with spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the lake and the retention pond over there. So transparency and communication, and you know, you take a look around you right now. What do we have? 19 people here. We have 1,407 homes. We have got to figure out a vehicle for communication and to rally the residents, if you will, and get everybody involved, not just, you know, a few people. And then as far as, you know, we have some issues outlined there that are, we have some legal liabilities going on right now with some repairs that need to be made. I think it's important that we take a look at some of those. One being the cart paths that stretch from Hoover High School all the way through Park Trace and out at the other end there. And you know, if someone trips, and we don't want the children to break a leg or cart path run off the side where the erosion is and get torn up and people get hurt. You know, we need to take a look at that. We need to take a look at the bridges. You know, we talked about that at the last meeting. You know, get the city out there to look at those bridges. You know, we have 42,000 pound trash truck running over those a couple times a week, and no one so far knows when those were looked at last, you know, to make sure that they're structurally sound. You know, we've got the one at Willow Trace that goes across to the cart path. You know, it's rusted and you know, the wood coming up. And so we've got some challenges out there that we need to take a look at, where you need to prioritize, and a lot of that's going to come from, you know, combing through the budget, where we can make some, you know, sound business decisions with the expenditures that we've had. Make sure we're opening everything up for bid, all of the things that we subcontract out, and continue to partner with the city. You know, we've got the issue out there on Stadium Trace, where we pay, as track, we pay $45,000 or $8,700 a month or whatever it is to light and cut the grass on Stadium Trace Boulevard. Now, I don't know how y'all feel about that, but that's not benefiting Willow Trace or Park Trace in a manner that I know of. And it's the city owns it, or the county. I mean, we should not be paying for that. So we need to, you know, we've got some challenges ahead of us, and these ladies and gentlemen up here are willing to take that on as well as myself, and comb through that and make this, like I said, one of the premier communities to live in here in Hoover.
Thank you, candidates. Mark, we'll start with you on this last one. What is one specific initiative you would champion if elected, and why?
Probably going to be it would be getting the bylaws and the covenants and the deed restrictions, getting our arms around those. Consetta has been a wealth of information here recently in which set the governing documents are, and somehow get that out to all of the residents, because as we have grown over where Susan lives, they pay their track, you know, $450 a year, but they also have their own small individual HOAs. And, you know, there are some things that are allowed in those communities because, you know, they're new. You know, Park Trace and Willow Trace, you know, we've been here for 25, 30 years, whatever it's been, and some of those are outdated. So we need to get our arms around that and all get on the same page, same set of tracks moving forward on what those bylaws and covenants and things are going to look like, and then start enforcing those, you know, fair, firm, and consistent, because we have some opportunity there.
So there are 9 neighborhoods in track, and of those that are running, I think we only represent 3 of the 9 neighborhoods. So probably what I would champion again goes back to communication. Just making sure that we have a solid communication plan and that we include members from all neighborhoods in our decision making.
The covenants and the bylaws are very much out of date. I think that finances is number one, that we have to look at this budget and what's being spent. $130,000 on lighting, lots of things that we need to, look at very, very closely. But I really think that 2010 was the last time the covenants were updated, bylaws were updated. So I think we've got a lot of work to do in looking long-term.
Alex just showed up, so I'm gonna let him come up top. I don't know, Tristan, if you want to repeat the question for Alex.
Alex, we're on question number 3. What is one specific initiative you would champion if elected, and why?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you all for being here. Appreciate y'all's patience. I was coming back from a work trip, some traffic, all that, so I'm trying to get here as quick as possible. So once again, thank you all for saving the seat for me. As far as the initiative, this has been something I have personally been working on the past few months as I had reviewed the budget and looked over some things, and we bring in nearly, 450 times nearly 1,500 homes, about $600,000+ a year annually from association. We have around 200,000 in change in reserves. So are we making that money maximize the most for all the homeowners? I personally don't think so. I think we have to go back and assess. So my first initiative would be, I've been the budget guy. So that's something I've been really, really harping on and really digging into since I kind of started my journey that kind of led me here to this stage. But I'll just be going through and looking at all that. Okay, what are we bringing in? What are we currently spending? How do we kind of audit and just completely start the system from scratch and say, all right, we have all of these expenditures. Well, how much of that can be cut? How much can be renegotiated? How much can be reappropriated? So, I mean, we're paying bizarre deal with the city with the landscaping and the lights along the median of Stadium Trace Parkway. That's tens of thousands of dollars. So and we don't really know what that goes to. So our money as homeowners has been spent for, we're going to look back to see how long it's been, a lot of discovery because we don't know. But it's been spent for a long time for stuff that's not really benefiting the homeowners. It seems like it's benefiting schools, the city, other businesses, other communities that aren't on our HOA, but we're fronting a lot of that bill. Let's get that money and some other money, get it back to us. What common areas can we do? What sort of amenities can we add that make our communities up to par with Everly, Ross Bridge, Lake Wilburn, Black Ridge, and all these other ones? We have a massive pool of resources here, and I personally just don't think that that is being spent for our own benefit, because the whole point of this whole thing is to increase our home values, to increasing the value of our community, and we just have to pull the resources together to do that. That was a quick one right out of the gate, guys.
What was the question again? What I would champion, it's hard to really get in specifics because I'll tell you this is our third one, and a couple times I've answered questions thinking it's right, and then later find out, that's not right, or no, that actually the city wouldn't be able to do that, it would be the HOA. So what I would probably champion is a commitment to dig into the details, go through it, and then share that information with you. So communication would be my number one. Once we go through and we figure out the budget, if there's any discrepancies, hey, let's tell the residents. What are the problems we've identified? Let's tell the residents. How do we prioritize things? Let's tell the residents. So you guys, whether you care or not, at least you'll know. And so that's what I think is the most important thing.
I would say the one thing that I'll go outside of the budget is, from my previous experience at an HOA, I found that the deferred maintenance was a problem. There was a lot of items that were not taken care of, and then it came to a head, and then all of a sudden we were forced by the city or the fire department to do this work. And so I want to look at all the current responsibilities of the HOA that we currently have, and anything that we may need to go ahead and repair now or get a plan for. That's what I want to step on the right direction going forward and do that first, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, candidates. So this next section is just a list of questions I've received from homeowners. I reached out to the community and asked that you guys submit any questions that you may have there that I could ask before we get into the Q&A. So I'll just start from the top. Matt, we can start with you on this. Do you support a cap on the reserve fund or on the annual dues?
Without going into a deep thing of the budget right now, I could not say yes or no on that. I'll say initially no, just because we just don't know the budget yet. Once we get through it, and get through all the numbers and understand exactly where we are for a base, then I'd say we can revisit that in the future, and then we can revisit that option.
So I agree with Matt. Until we have arms around the budget and what the costs are and everything, I can tell you guys, yeah, I'm for a cap on our dues. There could be a special assessment. There could be things we don't know about. I will say that I am a big believer in being frugal. I am cherishing every single dollar that is given to the HOA and not misspending it and not wasting it. So I consider myself a fiscal conservative. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, to echo it, I mean, I think that's the unanimous point. We have to really do a lot of discovery and know what we're dealing with. I'm a small business owner. I try to push dollars as far as they can go. So kind of reiterating what I previously said, I believe from just all the dissecting I've done in the budget, there's a lot of room to get money from other places. So I am gonna say, can I say we wouldn't raise dues, have any assessments? No, because there's too many unknowns there. We mentioned this in the last meeting, but there could be a major safety issue we have. For example, one of these bridges. Well, if one of those bridges is on the bridge, no pun intended, bridge of collapse, well, we would have to have an assessment for that because, oh, well, do we not want to pay some money, or a family on a golf cart drove over and it collapsed? So these are the kind of things that we have to actually really research before we know, but I would not even remotely entertain any sort of increase on dues until we've made sure that we are maximizing every single dollar we've had and everything has done a comprehensive audit and make that $600,000+ annual budget that we have working incredibly hard and make sure there's no other outstanding issues that need to get addressed. And if that's all good, then I would not see a reason for any near foreseeable future that we would need to raise dues, but I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, oh, we're definitely not going to do that just because, like I said, there's just too many unknowns in this moment.
I hope we don't have to raise dues. That is not my goal at all for us to ever have to raise the dues. I don't want to be locked in on it as well. I think we need to go through this budget, see what's been paid in the past and what we're responsible for, and look at where all the contracts and long-term commitments that we have and short-term commitments and what we can do better and smarter and be more efficient with the money.
I agree. Until we know what our needs are, what fully our needs are, it's hard to say whether or not we could put a cap on dues. However, as Mark mentioned earlier, I live in Knox Square, and in Knox Square, we pay $950 for our personal HOA dues, and so on top of that, we pay $450 for Trace Crossings. So I can't say, that I would like to definitely put a cap on it, but if at all possible, I would say yes.
Not for, I don't know, we don't know enough about what we have yet to really make an intelligent statement on that. I've not been on any boards that cap a reserve fund because you just never know what's going to happen. And you want to steer clear also of special assessments. Those go over like a lead balloon. As far as raising HOA dues, $450 a year for us that don't have an additional HOA that we have to pay into, we have inflation. As much as we don't want to consider that, it happens. Labor goes up, material goes up, things that we're going to do, the price may increase. I'm not for paying more. I'm for doing more with what we currently have and being very anal with that and there, but we couldn't say that we, you know, wouldn't have to raise dues.
Thank you, candidates. Next question is a little bit of a specific one. And Mark, we can start with you. With all the houses purchased for rental properties in Creekside, does the TCRA plan to limit how many houses may be purchased for rental properties in Creekside and TCRA in the future?
Well, I don't believe that we as an HOA can legislate that. I think that, you know, people buy their property, as long as they're conforming to and abiding by whatever their covenants and bylaws and deed restrictions are, you know, if they want to rent the property, then they should be able to rent it. I do know that, or I think I know anyway, that the city of Hoover, you know, they have a short-term rental ordinance, if you will. Now, I think where it may come into play is this SEC tournament has gotten pretty large. So, you know, what are you going to call a, you know, 6-day rental on your house? You're going to leave for, you know, families coming in for that. And we've probably got some of that going on even outside of, I guess it's Creekside. So, yeah, I just don't, you know, I don't think we can legislate that.
I also agree legally, I don't know that we have the right to put regulations on rental homes. However, I do believe that once we revise or review our covenants, we then turn around and enforce our covenants. So if a rental home is not keeping up the property, we do what we say we're going to do and provide the letters and then provide the fees and then put the lien on the home if needed. But I do believe that we have to follow what the covenants say.
I agree, the covenants and the bylaws, we have to honor that as a board, and whatever they say, whether they do need to be updated, but whatever they say, we need to honor that as a board. That's my opinion.
So the big part of jumping into this thing is we're going to have to seek a lot of legal counsel. So I work in real estate, I've worked in property management. I am not a full-time real estate agent, but do have a license. So I know a little bit about this world. I also have a rental property myself. But I think what we're looking at here is this, I think we mentioned Creekside specifically, correct? So can I take a poll if anybody in here live in Creekside? Okay, so we have a few. So it sounds like this is a Creekside specific, I'm going to say it's probably happening everywhere to extent, but it sounds like this is something that, for one reason or another, is something that's on the radar for the residents of Creekside. So I think this, I was going to mention the microcosm, is every neighborhood under the TCRA umbrella has sort of their own things going on that, hey, we need a little extra help with, attention, et cetera, et cetera. This sounds like this is something that's going in Creekside. So I think what we have to do there is, all right, let's get some quorum of all the folks in Creekside and say, hey, what's going on? What are the issues that we're seeing with this? And what are ways that we can fix it? Because it may not, yeah, to the point, there may be things we can or cannot enforce, but are there specific things that, and I don't want to pull an example out of the hat right now just in order to be respectful for what might actually be going on. But if there is something going on, okay, well maybe not renters per se, but that specific issue that is just by maybe just coincidence happens to be more problematic with renters, well, how do we nip that in the bud? Is there something that you hold homeowners more accountable for? Are the homeowners and or the landlords aware of what's going on with the renters? Is it institutional owners that are dealing with these rentals? Because there are some things to where you can't sell to institutional, but there's a lot of loopholes and tricks to deal with these sort of things, but I think the most important deal is getting with the residents of that neighborhood saying, hey, what is the issue? Looping back with the legal counsel we have and say, okay, here's the issues at hand. What can we do to put in the bylaws to help with that? And of course, following with making sure we're up to speed with all of the laws, rules, and regulations with the city of Hoover to make sure that's done and that everybody's just staying above board and following the rules and laws as they are written.
Yeah, a couple things. One is that whether it's a rental property or regular property, I mean, if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, we need to. Everyone should be treated the same. Second thing is Mark brought up the short-term rental. there's no Airbnbs that are allowed in a residential neighborhood. This can only be done in an industrial or apartment complex, and there is a provision, I believe it's 7 days a year. I call it the Greystone factor for the golf tournament, where a resident can rent their home on a short-term basis for up to 7 days a year. That's it. So other than that, I am a big believer in first-party property rights. So if someone owns a home and they want to rent it, as long as it's a long-term lease and it doesn't violate the city laws, the state laws, or the HOA covenants, then they have every right to do it. And if they're not maintaining the property, then the HOA needs to step in. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with what everyone else has said. I don't know how much we can govern it specifically, but if there's anything that they're stepping out of line of per our covenants, then we need to enforce them, and we'll enforce it just like we would to anyone else in the neighborhood.
Thank you. This may be our last question, and then we'll open the floor up to homeowners for them to ask questions. So, and I know we're going to like this question. There are a number of homes that are not conforming to the standards of the HOA as regards to yard maintenance and parking. How will these problems be resolved? Matt, we can start with you.
Well, first we'll look at our covenants and see what they currently state, find out what they're not doing, and then first I'd say we'll address it with each individual person that's in violation of our covenants. First, we'll talk to them, see if we get a response out of them. If there's no response, then we'll do the letter route and then the legal route if we have to. Hopefully not, because that just costs us money and we may not get that money back. But first off, I'd like to talk to each and any resident that's not conforming to it and find out if there's something that we can do to help them, because we're all neighbors in this, and that's how I want to treat everybody.
Yeah, I can't add anything to that. I agree 100%.
Well, in my landing of the runway question about what was your first initiative, I mentioned the budget. I think the second initiative is going to be we need to overhaul some of these some of the bylaws and covenants. So reading through a lot of these, a lot of the specifics for yard maintenance and things it's a very big gray area. If you look at some of the language that's in these documents, it doesn't go into a lot of specifics, which isn't really good. It's left up to interpretations of whoever the eye of the beholder is, which the homeowners, the board, the management company, it gets dicey and it gets a little combative. So I think one thing, we need to have very specific language for, hey, this is the standard, pictures, whatever. Hey, this is what it's supposed to look like, this is how it will be enforced, and make sure that we're having a communication way where every homeowner, every renter, new or old, knows that. I recently bought up my home in Willow Trace about 2 years ago. I didn't know who the management company was for months until I was scratching the call, and I was under the impression it was McKay. So my closing process was really bad. So me as a homeowner, it's really hard to kind of get your ducks in a row and know what's going on. So we got to have a better outreach program there, so when people do move into any of these neighborhoods, they know, hey, here's the rules, here's what you're signing up for, and this is how it will be enforced. Get up and go. And for the people who haven't been doing it for a while, got to kind of nudge them back to say, hey, enforcement on this has been kind of touchy for reason X or reason Y, but this is how it'll be moving forward. And don't just, bring the hammer down on people, kind of slowly nudge it, and then the people that are a little bit more apprehensive to get in line, then you start maybe nudging a little bit harder. And we do that. We follow what's going on in the city. Myself and some neighbors, Mark was one of them. We went to a city council meeting probably 2 or 3 months ago, and they had the deal up there with the yards, and they're going to send the letters and crack the whip on the homeowners who weren't in line. I mean, the grass was like this tall in some of these yards, and this made it to a city council meeting, and I'm over here. We live in this beautiful HOA, which should be one of the more premier neighborhoods in Hoover. We got grass up to here, and I'm like, man, if the city's doing that for these homes, and we got jungles in our neighborhood that aren't being touched, that's a problem. So we've got to get consistency. So I think it starts with the city, and then we make sure it goes to the covenants and make sure we have all the familiarity, and most importantly, know that all the homeowners are familiar with it.
Yeah, I think we work with the art committee to make sure that everything's being done like the covenants and the bylaws say. We send them a letter, we knock on their door, we find out what the issue is. Somebody's had a medical issue, can't get it done, but absolutely, we want everything to look as beautiful as possible. I've already had people stop me and talk to me about mailboxes not conforming, mailboxes not having doors on them. So I think that's something we have to look at, but we need to, everybody, do everything we can to make the the neighborhood look as beautiful as possible.
I think that if we want to maintain or even improve our home values, we have to keep our yards up. And so because of that, I believe that we need to look at our covenants and our bylaws. If those need to be revised, revise those, and then we need to follow those. In our current bylaws, from what I have read, it starts with a letter. After 30 days, they get a letter, and then another letter after 60 days. And then after that, after 90 days have passed, if nothing is done, there's a $100 fine. You know, I believe in communication as well, so I think we start with knocking on the door to see what's going on, to see if we can help as neighbors. And then if need be, we follow the process of the covenants.
Yeah, we just need to be following the process, and we don't need to be applying these selectively. You know, we have had some issues here in the past 6-7 months that we're going through that, you know, some folks have done what they were asked to do that are in the bylaws and the covenants, and then we have some of those that they just don't do anything about it. And I mean, we have some situations that have been going on for 6 months, and that clearly is outside of the first letter, second letter, third letter. I think where we have run into the challenge right now, and it's going to be a 12-foot stack of coat hangers, is that we, or the board in the past, has not enforced this consistently. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the situations that we have. So, you know, I'm for the first letter, second letter, third letter, and if that time, if that next process is a lien on the property, then it's a lien on the property. And then I believe that we can actually move toward foreclosure on properties if they just aren't going to do it. I think it was brought up at the last meeting. We have a homeowner somewhere in tract that owes $80,000 in HOA dues. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but the basic math on that tells me at $450 a year, they are not going to pay. So, you know, yeah, there's some challenges, but first we have to get our arms around it, make sure that we're abiding by it ourselves as a board and as a management company, and be consistent in how we apply it.
Thank you, candidates. Can we give them a round of applause? We've done this a couple of nights now. They've done a great job, so thank you, candidates. And thank you guys for being here tonight. At this time, I'll open the floor to you guys. Does anyone have any questions? I'll bring the mic to you. If you would, just please state your name and where, what neighborhood you come from, and feel free to ask any questions.
So my name is Craig Hamilton. This is my wife Sherry. We've lived in Park Trace for 27 years.
27 years.
And
Seen it all.
before I started, I didn't get who Kristen. You're with,
Consetta, Gideonport.
what is it?
Consetta,
Consetta, and you're with SNS?
I am.
Okay, nice to know you, because I've been in touch with you guys over numerous issues. So the last two questions that you brought up are exactly what I came here to talk about tonight. So I'll start with the rental. We had neighbors that rented next to us and across the street from us. One is currently running a home business out of their rental home. We were good friends with the owner who got divorced and moved away. And I have documentation from my conversation with him to where he said he's not going to keep his yard up like when he lived there. So we have weeds blowing in. I have a neighbor next to me that I've talked to SNS and Greg Williams about. And they have done absolutely nothing with their yard. And supposedly I talked to Philip. Philip's been the person that I've been involved with. I think you were copied on too, possibly, by Greg. But they've done absolutely nothing. I have to spend more money with my lawn service and my personal service to keep the weeds out of my yard because they've been terrible. And so the question I have, the two questions I have is rental. When we first moved here under McKay, you weren't allowed to rent a house. I don't know why that disappeared, but it did in Park Trace. So rental, I'd like you to address that. And the second one is internet service, especially in Park Tracy and Trace Crossing City where we live. There's several neighbors, several houses in there that are a wreck, and they have not done anything. So the aesthetics of the house, the outside of what the house looks like, and the yards would be one question. And then addressing the rental issue, I heard you guys say that you're going to stay on top of the covenants to those people that rent, which I'd like to know. But those are the two major issues that we have.
And one other thing I'll put to, McCain Selective Management, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm sorry. I know McCain, but what they went in Selective Management, in my opinion, have been the biggest waste of money. I don't mean to be disrespectful. You call them up, they do absolutely nothing with the problems that we see. The other thing is also the communication, because way back when we moved in, rental properties were not allowed. So all the covenants and bylaws were changed, and people were not notified of those changes. It was done behind everyone's back, probably to help people out to, so they can move away from here, rent properties and everything. So I guess my question is what's going to happen with the communication with selective management, and then also the communication to let us all know what is going on, because I just feel like everything's been done behind our backs.
So, since you brought up my name, it's okay, I'll address this first. Two things that I heard in that was, number one, first of all, SMS serves at the pleasure of the board. The board is the developer. So if the developer's not willing to do anything, I don't know if SMS really has the power to do, or what they had the power to do, I don't know. So, but I can say this, with the handover in the new board, you have five of the 6 people up here are going to get elected. We're all residents. We care about our community, so hopefully that changes. The second issue on the rental, somebody brought that up in Park Trace, so I researched it, and I believe the covenants that I was given a copy with the original covenants. I went through and read it. I did not see anything that had an HOA ban any rental property. So I don't know where that came from, but I've only lived in Park Trace, going on 5 years. So I'm not saying what you were told was incorrect, but I did not see it in the covenants. I don't know if SMS is aware of any ones, but it looked like the original ones to me. And when I went through them, I didn't see anything that banned rentals.
It was way before SMS was involved in the case, and like I said, we had friends that had sold houses.
Yeah.
Because they were renting, got caught renting, and then somewhere down the line, they just got rid of that.
Yeah.
What you're referring to in Park Trace, renters cannot be part of the pool and tennis club. So that is a thing. And some people get that confused, maybe it did change, I don't know. But a lot of people that move in now think, oh, you just can't rent, and that's not the case. You can rent, you just can't be part of the pool and tennis
I
club.
think one of the problems also is a renter is not going to love and care for a home like a homeowner. And I truly believe that, and something has to be done with the homeowners. Just sending a letter here and there, nothing's ever been done. I mean, the letters don't work, nothing works.
And to what Mark was just saying, and other members of the board up here, I think that's going to change. And thank you, Carolyn. I forgot about that in Park Trace. We both serve on the HOA at Park Trace. Yes, rental properties are not allowed to use the swim and tennis club as part of the HOA there. So.
I could share with you, I experienced it. That's how I ended up in Willow Trace. When I was first going to move up here from Prattville, I was going to go up behind the home store there with the Signature Homes and actually put a deposit to build a house there. Met my current wife, and as we were looking for some things at the last minute, she said, oh, by the way, I have a rental property here in Hoover. I said, okay, well, where is this? And so she shared it with me, and I said, okay. So on the way to the airport that morning, I swung by it, and this is in July, Christmas lights were still hanging off the side of it. The grass, I'm not kidding you, was up to the knees, and a few other things with the property. And then I looked around at the neighborhood, and I was like, wow, how could this have happened? So I called her on the way, and I said, hey, how many letters do you have from like your HOA? She said, well, none really, but one of the neighbors called me and said they weren't taking care of the property. I said, well, here, let's do this. You send those renters a note today, tell them they don't have to pay the last 2 months that they owe you. They don't have to pay the deposit, but they need to be out in 30 days, because if not, this thing's gonna be a disaster. Thank God we were able to get them out. But the board, which, and I'm gonna come to Concetta's defense here a little bit, being very involved in this for the last 5 years in the board and who makes the decisions. The SMS can only do what Billy Silver and USX said they could do, right? They have to be the ones that, you know, say these letters are gonna go out. They have to be the one that say, okay, this fine's gonna go out, as I understand it. They have to be the one to process the lien. I can tell you, we in Willow Trace have Lori, who is in the audience this evening, that runs our pool and tennis club, and she is the master of liens. We have a significant number of them out. She confers with our legal advisor on them every year as they're renewed. They're being charged interest, you know, as we move forward. That's what needs to happen to the homeowner that is renting that home. It's their responsibility and their accountability to ensure that it's being kept up according to those bylaws and those covenants. Now, you will be able to see moving forward, certainly with all of you out there and the 5 that are elected running this board, you'll see actions being taken a lot quicker with those type issues. My hope is that we go to a situation, because we have so many different neighborhoods, where we would get like a person from, you know, Park Trace that's gonna, you know, go to the board, and they're gonna be like the advisor person that takes all those issues to the board, right? Funnels that communication. Willow Trace, we may not need one, who knows? Over here where Susan lives, someone for her neighborhood that, you know, is on point to communicate things to the board, so that we can take action on it, so that we can move forward and once again, you know, make this a premier community. But that's a very valid concern, and the homeowner needs to be held accountable for that.
If there is a way to, that would be kind of going back with meeting with legal counsel, specifically folks that have worked in real estate, in HOA type of laws, and look at other communities and what they're doing in the sense of, I'm going to make up an example, I have no idea if this is possible, legal exists, but just indulge me for a second. You go and say, okay, well, if you are a homeowner, which are bound to the deed restrictions and covenants of the property, but you are renting, maybe there's higher fines if your tenant is screwing up, and then you as the homeowner will be levied those fines. I don't know if that's legal or possible, but those are the type of ideas that I would want to seek that counsel with, to say, hey, obviously other communities deal with rentals. What are ways to do that? Because you're absolutely correct in the sense of renters do not take care of the properties like homeowners. Now, there are examples of some that do, but if they're not, they don't have any skin in the game of that property value increasing. We all do. So we have to be very diligent in seeing what are all the legal options we can do to make sure that's done, and then also being a better advocate of people. This would apply to homeowners but renters as well, as saying, okay, well, going back to what I was saying earlier about the avenue of going to the city and saying, hey, if these properties aren't upkept, we need to be swift and diligent on making sure that that hammer comes down on these people. Because what's going to happen is everybody's kind of been used to laissez-faire living around here, parking cars in front yards and trailers and bushes and whatever else is that we've seen going around here. But that's, I think when everybody realizes letters are going out, enforcement's happening, and the chatter gets out, everybody will kind of get with the program, or there's going to be some for sale signs in yards. People say, okay, we'll sit in there, but I can get away with this. And we all want that to happen. And kind of per the point, I'm not going to be carrying water for SMS. I don't work for SMS, but I also, when I first got started with all this, you kind of have this idea of like, oh, you know, the management company, they're the enemy and they're the bad guy. Then as I kind of learn a little bit more about it, it's like, oh, well, the developers, none of them live in any of these neighborhoods. Once they're built and sold, they don't care about the home values going up. They're ready for their next neighborhood. They have been having this thing for over 30 plus years. I did some statistical research. About 1 to 3% of HOAs have over 1,500 homes like what we're in. So we're in a very weird anomaly. Most developments do not take over 30 plus years to get handed over to homeowners. So we have a lot of weird, quirky things that are going on. And I hate to use the word mess because that's extreme word, but we're in kind of uncharted waters of how to navigate this, and I think that is because these programs have been so exacerbated that are kind of more into the category of homeowner board versus developer board. They usually don't get this long in the can kicked down the road this long, because that doesn't normally happen. So we have a lot of stuff to clean up, but I think the most important part is getting with the neighbors of each neighborhood and saying, where are the issues, how's it happening, and then we get armed with all the legal ammunition we can, either from the city or with covenants or what we don't have written but need to get added on there, and get pretty hard with the enforcement and making sure that this stuff stops happening, because you're right, it's absolutely miserable when you have to deal with your neighbor's yard looking like an absolute garbage pile.
Matt, Susan, Mike? Sure. Consent give you important.
Okay, and I'm not, defending, I understand your position, but I want to address it. What they said about SMS, we work for the homeowners at the direction of the board. And in your particular situation that you've described tonight, in addition to other similar that we have across all 45 communities that we manage, the difference is that we can send the letter, we can call them, we can send the letters, we can find them, but still nothing happens. The only thing that can happen to change it is when we hire contractors to go and make the change. We get the grass cut, we get the weeds treated, we get the Christmas lights taken down. Whatever that costs the HOA, it gets added to that property's account. And when it doesn't get paid, we send them to a collections attorney that files for a judgment, and once we have the judgment, then we garnish wages and we pay the association back. That's how it works in all the communities that we manage when it's a homeowner-run board. Because they allow us to, they direct us to, and that's all we need is that direction. So I suspect that come the 1st of next year, when this board gets rolling, that things will change.
Thanks for explaining the process.
Matt, Mike, Susan, anyone else care to respond? Next question? Okay.
Oh, Lordy.
Oh, yeah. I love this. We all know, I'm Lori Haglis, I live in Willow Trace, and we all know over this next year how big of a job it's going to be for whoever's elected on the board. I know that I started in the middle of June. Things were going along, and then I got that email that said that the developer was turning it over. I can say for myself, I've had in excess of 100 conversations with the city of Hoover, with councilmen, with my neighbors, with friends, with SMS, with all different avenues, trying to figure out what it's gonna be like and how am I personally gonna be able to benefit from us having an owner-run HOA. Can you tell me, each one of you, approximately how many conversations or emails or text messages or hours you've spent studying financials or whatever that tells me that you've been preparing, like I have been preparing, to have this HOA turned over to the residents?
Who do you want to start with, Tristan?
Whoever wants to jump in.
Okay. I see you smiling, consider. I'm not sure I could put a number on it myself. I've been very involved with SMS in trying. To answer your question, it would take several reams of paper for the amount of emails that have gone back and forth with Tristan and myself, Concetta and myself, Phil when he was here, and going all the way back to Mark LeBeau when he was working at SMS, and we got a few things done there. Have also worked with Christie Drivers on the city street, the stadium trace, because I'm still just dumbfounded and baffled about that. I just don't understand it at all. Also, we've worked with the city on a couple of residential challenges we had in Willow Trace, where I personally went to the city building inspector, currently working with Mac right now on a homeowner that has decided to build a miniature parking deck behind their home with no permits and nothing done engineering-wise. Matt, you would die if you saw this thing. So yeah, I've spent an excessive amount of time, not excessive because I want the community to be everything it can be, but I have spent an inordinate amount of time volunteering and working with Tristan and Concetta and her management team, and even at one time several years back, Billy Silver over there at USX, we had God, I wish he was still here, Brent. We had a homeowner here that he had more contacts with the city and the state and who to go to. I felt like his puppy because he helped me just navigate right through that to get street lights painted, the bulbs replaced, get the signs repainted, re-lettered, all kinds of things. So spent a lot of time with that, and no matter what happens with this election, that won't stop. It'll just be that the go-to person will be the current board that we have with those concerns and keeping them, in the loop and on track with moving things forward.
I would also have to agree, it's probably been hundreds of people. Whether I'm talking in person to my neighbors in Knox Square or Abington, or I'm on Facebook talking to our Facebook group for our neighborhood. I've also spent hours going through the bylaws and the covenants. When you look at them, you see where they're patched. There's some that go back to the 1980s, and then there's addendums to them. I've gone through the emails that I've received from Tristan. That's how I actually found the bylaws, and that we do actually have a website. I have not had to use SMS much because we are a new neighborhood, so our needs are, in my opinion, minimal. I think our needs for the new neighborhoods like Abington and Knox Square are more communication needs, just recognizing where our money's going, what our money's going towards, who all is involved in this TCRA HOA. But yes, I've spent lots of time, and whether or not I'm elected or not, I'm going to continue to spend lots of time. I'm going to be in Knox Square for a long time, and I want our community to be the best it can be.
I've talked to several people in other neighborhoods as well as my neighbors in Willow Trace, but I've talked to some people in Chestnut Ridge and Creekside and asked their opinions on what they thought was important going forward. I've done some research and talked to some people. I talked to an attorney that specializes in real estate and writes covenants for subdivisions all of the time, and just really tried to look into, 2010 was the last time the bylaws were updated. So I just think that we need to look at this thing and but I think that what really got me interested in running for the board was more when I saw the waste of money spent on the lake, dredging the lakes 5 times. I thought that was just outrageous that they would vote to do that. The board would do that 5 times and spend our money in that way. So I think, that's what really pushed the button for me to run. But I've been talking to my neighbors for a long, long time about, the improvements and things we need to do in Trace Crossings as a whole.
So yeah, my start has kind of 2 very weird points. There's a direct and indirect. The indirect's kind of funny, so I'm gonna come back to that in a second. So it first started, like I said, my wife and I moved into Willow Trace June of 2024, so we're about a year and a half. So we're one of the more newer residents here, but right out of the gate, didn't know who the management company was, so find that out probably a month or 2 in, had some home improvements we need to do, filled the forms out, did all the things. And in that process, I had probably, maybe an hour and a half long conversation with Mark LeBeau, just learning all the aspects of it. It was like, okay, this is my first association neighborhood I had personally lived in. So it was just, I hate to kind of nerd it out, but my real estate background repertoire, just learning more about, okay, how does all of these moving parts work? Just, I enjoy it, nerd. And then, kind of fast forwarding when Phil was running it, had a very long conversation with him, had some letters, and this was earlier this year, and then had just lots of correspondence. We're gonna pause there. Going to my indirect deal. So as we know, Dr. Peter DeFranco, he was the one fighting the good fight with the pond, and his property was on it. And it was probably 8 or 9 years ago. I actually used to be co-workers with his daughter. And she was moving at the time and naturally called me out a truck, a trailer, and I was in better shape back then, so I was strong. So naturally, who else would you call when you need to move? We went to pick some furniture up from her father's house. And he had a beautiful house on the water, and she's like, oh my gosh, you'll never believe, like this pond had all this dredging, da-da-da. And my dad was fighting, and he got samples in the development. And it was this crazy story about this like pond thing. And this was probably back in like 2016 or 17. And she was just telling me on and on about it. So I'm like, oh wow, crazy. Never would have thought that ever would have come up to be a factor in my life again. Just kind of in one ear out the other. And sure enough, here we are in 2025, we get a letter about that pond, and then I'm like, wait a second, that's that same pond she told me about nearly a decade ago. So from that standpoint, I knew a little bit more about that just from just bizarre small world circumstances. So I think when we got that letter and some other things, and I think my real journey began with, as we were looking over that budget and some other stuff and reading through the covenants, I for somehow had a copy that I guess I got from the MLS. I talked to all my neighbors who lived here for 15, 20 plus years, and they're like, oh, I've never seen the covenants. So my head's spinning at this point. I'm like, how is this a thing? And so start kind of conversing with more neighbors and just realizing that this whole thing's a mess. And somewhere in this, it just prompted me to show up to SMS. I'm like, I just got to ask some questions. And Consetta was nice enough and talked to me for nearly 2.5 hours. And that's how my journey began. So as far as the correspondence from that, after the meeting, digging through budgets and sending emails and talking to more and more people that I could, it was just like, okay, I've done so much information gathering plus the background that I have that I thought would have really worked well to be here. I mean, after that kind of moment, it's really kind of hard to quantitate how much that has, but through doing all that information, I think it would be doing a disservice to take all that I've learned from that, the budget, the covenants, and just all the fine print saying, hey, we've got to take that knowledge from all the conversations with neighbors and being a newer resident that has a major vested interest in these property values increasing because you bought at high interest rates at the peak of the real estate market. I'm in it for the long haul here. I'm not sitting on a mountain of equities. Like, I got to grow it. We all got to grow it. So that's where the work started. And for me, it's keyword started. Like, there's a lot more work going, and I'm in it for the long haul. So that's what has me on the stage and looking forward to keeping that going and being in a position where I can actually serve everybody, and we can all work together to literally what is the most mutual goal that we all have in here.
So, when I ran for city council, I met probably 3,000 people in about 60 days, new people that I've never met. I've lived most of my life in Hoover. I thought I knew just about everyone until I ran for city council, and I realized how many people I don't know. I have not spent as much time digging into the HOA stuff as many on this board that are running. I had friends ask me to do it because my skill set is really one of solving problems, digging into details, which I'm very good at doing, but I'm also good at, I've served on the UAB National Alumni Society board twice. I'm currently on an HOA in our neighborhood group, and the reality of it is we hire SMS. We pay them a lot of money to handle a lot of the day-to-day stuff. And so where I'm coming at it is if we have an issue and it's not being resolved by SMS, or if a neighbor's not getting what they need on a rental property or something like that, then yeah, reach out to me. But I'm not the type of person that's going to drive through neighborhoods. I'm not saying anybody up here will be, but if it gets down to the granular where you're expecting a board member to drive through neighborhoods and figure out what's in violation and what's not, that's not me. And I'm not saying that anyone up here does that. I'm just saying for me, serving on this board will literally be get a hold of the finances, improve the communication, keep people in touch with what's going on, and try to solve problems as a group, and hopefully whatever, if I'm elected 1 or 2 or 3 years, because I think it's a staggered thing, whatever that amount is, I don't plan on serving a long period of time. So if we can get it in a better place where the transition's gone, we're not raising dues and stuff's getting solved, then hopefully someone else, one of you guys run, Lori, the next election, and take over and move from there.
I would say I definitely have not spent the amount of time that some of the other potential candidates have put into already this community. I saw the opportunity, and so that's why I put my name in the hat to do it. I felt like I provided good services to my previous HOA. I think we did a lot of good things while I was on that board, and so I just wanted to pass it on to this community and add to this one.
Thank you, guys. Anyone else? Question?
I'm Aaron Nelson and live at backs of their house are lined by high, tall pine trees. So that is a complaint that I have that I'm simply, that you necessarily can't do anything about. But in the future, I think emphasis should be placed upon the fact of what is planted, how close it is planted to area homes within the common area. So that's my comment. And I have limbs that come over into my backyard that fall weekly. I have tree limbs that come over across into my gutters. And this is a problem throughout the area. The pine trees grow very quickly, and because of that, they somewhat save the soil, I assume, preventing erosion. But at the same time, it is a problem, and that, my main concern is the pine trees.
Thank you. So to my knowledge, I may be able to speak a little bit on that. So to my knowledge, if a tree is in the common area for TCRA, if it's dead and or it poses a threat to property, so if a storm comes through and falls over, you can contact me with the management company and we can get that taken care of. If a tree is on your property, and you want it removed, that's something that'll have to go through ARC.
These trees are not on my property.
Okay.
They're on the property or behind the house, and I have problems with it.
Okay. Well, I'll check into that for you. Candidates, and you guys want to add anything?
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
I was just gonna say on the tree issue, another problem with I see around pine trees in our house, in the area, if you look at any pine tree and you see all the limbs are basically, falling off or it looks dead going up, all the branches are slowly except for the top, it's pine beetles. It's a problem in the south, there's no cure for it. Those can create a problem once they're around the neighborhood. I've had a couple of pine trees about this big around, the wind comes through, they just snap in half. That's because of the pine beetles. So, to your point, if you have situations like that, you feel like it's a concern, I would definitely bring it to the board.
I have one last question to ask. Trace crossings has exploded, okay? And I'm not just talking about the homes. Does the board have any pull as far as, I'm one that, I love the restaurants, I love all that, but obviously Stadium Trace is becoming like 280, okay? At Park Trace, there's nowhere to expand it because the homes are right up there. Do you guys have any pull? Are you involved at all with what is going to happen with all of that and the road and expanding or, all the traffic and everything?
I believe, and y'all two correct me if I'm wrong on this one, the only pull that we would have other than just going to the city, and Steve would probably have the most knowledge on that as far as the navigating from the city standpoint of just advocating for the homeowners and just being, hey, we've got nearly 1,500 homes with thousands of residents that feel this way, that this will be directly affecting, which I would be pushing if I'm on the board to be, hey, we need to have a good advocating channel because things need to make their way up to the city. We need to have a better pipeline for that. Because some of the issues that people have brought up here, it's more of a city issue than an HOA issue, but the HOA can be better about advocating for homeowners to the city to get those specific complaints that maybe the management company cannot enforce, but the city can. That's something we really need to make sure that all residents know kind of where the enforcement needs to be coming from. But as far as that specifically, I do know we have, I'm gonna ballpark between 50 plus individual parcels of TCRA land that is just owned that surrounds all these neighborhoods.
Probably more than that.
Yes, it's a ton. I've looked them up. It's gonna be 75 plus. There's a ton of parcels. So a lot of these trees that you drive by with a significant amount of acreage is actually owned by all of us. So seemingly if we're not developing that land, which I would imagine probably couldn't be developed because I don't see why the developer would just, let that go if they could because they're, after this. But if there is an opportunity for that, I would imagine most of the homeowners are gonna say, no, let's not do that. So obviously if that's within our control, we're not gonna do it. But as far as some of the other properties that are owned by Broad Metro and some of these other folks, they can kind of do what they want as far as just us going to the city and saying yes, no, maybe. And I think what we really need is a city council pipeline. So something I would propose would be at least one person just have a rotation on the board, be it every single city council meeting that happens, zoning and planning, so that way if there is something that is pertinent that residents need to know about, we can have a good communication pipeline to say, hey, this is happening, this is something we need to be aware of, or maybe we need to have people go stand up and speak and advocate to it so that we can make sure that we attack any potential problems early and often before the ball's just too far past it and we're just being reactionary instead of proactive.
The Stadium Village Phase 2, there's 17 new businesses that are signed to come and develop there. There's going to be a lot more commercial development up on the hill there, including the 750-seat amphitheater down from Grimaldi's and Walk-Ons that's going toward 459. So there's a lot more development, commercial development coming. The Urban Cookhouse is going in. Rodney Scott's had signed a lease to go there, barbecue, and they pulled out and went to Chelsea, and so Urban Cookhouse is going in where they were. So, but there's 17 new businesses that have signed up for Phase 2 right now.
So, in addition to what's already been said, there's also a TCBA, which is Trace Crossings Business Association. And I would also advocate, in addition to having somebody from each community, that we also, as a board, have somebody from TCBA be a direct line to the board so that we know what's going on in the business community around us and can also advocate in that realm as well.
So the quickest way to resolve the traffic issue on Stadium Trace Parkway, when Stadium Trace Phase 2 was first proposed, there was going to be a road that connected in Brock's Gap Parkway. The residents did not want it, so to my knowledge, the Stadium Trace Village 2 that's happening will not attach to Brock's Gap Parkway. There's no plans to do so. So what's going to relieve the traffic is the interchange, assuming that the city of Hoover can afford it. And if the interchange does happen, that parkway, when it's built, will take all the traffic from Black Ridge, Lake Woburn, the backside of the neighborhood, and flow it out on a parkway, which will then be right next to the interchange. And if it does that, that should help substantially reduce the traffic on Stadium Trace Parkway, hopefully. That's the thought.
That's about 10 years away.
Well, the money that we borrowed to build the interchange was about 3 years ago, and so we're coming up on the state of Alabama's bidding it. So the question is, what's the cost? Because I think the city of Hoover agreed to pay 44% of the construction costs, but anything over $106 million in construction costs, the city of Hoover is on the hook for. So if that comes back $125, $130, $140 million, can the city afford to pay for the interchange? That's the big unknown. So everyone's waiting to see what that delta is on it.
Thank you, candidates. I think we have time for one more question.
So mine kind of piggybacks a little bit on what she was asking, but certainly golf carts are a big thing in the neighborhoods, right? And to your point, we know there's going to be Stadium Trace Village 2. There's going to be expansion at Brock's Gap, some of those things. One of the great things about living where we do in Park Trace is the ability to use the golf carts and go over there. I know it's with the business association side of it, but would you advocate to have more trails or more opportunity to connect over there and have golf cart parking to maybe alleviate some of the car traffic in terms of using the golf cart, similar to Peachtree City or somewhere like that in Atlanta, if you're familiar?
That's an excellent comment, Peachtree City. You know, that development's been around for decades over there, but also the villages down in Florida, if anyone is familiar with that. If we could get more of what he is talking about, we could alleviate. So I know myself, Alex, and several of our neighbors, I just bought a brand new golf cart because I wore my other one out in 2 years, right? I don't know if this is my I'm increasing or decreasing carbon footprint, but my brand new golf cart's already got 48 miles on it, and I've only ridden it 3 times, right? Because I go where she is. I go to eat over there on it. And if we could get more golf cart parking, and if we could maybe expand those paths somehow, I don't know how. A lot of times I have more questions than I have answers. But I think it's an excellent idea, and I really appreciate you bringing that up and seeing if we could do something about that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, you can spot Mark and I cruising often. When I first moved in, probably day one, had one pull up to the house, and in about a year and a half, I put 1,200 miles on that thing just driving around here. So there's a lot of familiarity with it, but it's awesome because it helps us residents keep our spending money and our tax dollars in Hoover. And the fact that we have all these awesome trails and ability to get to businesses is really good for us in the city and it's a selling point. But the problem is, okay, so a lot of my Creekside people, does anybody know about the golf cart trail? Or who doesn't know about the golf cart trail? Okay, y'all weren't even aware there's a golf cart trail. Okay, so there's a lot of common facilities that we have. So there's a golf cart and walking trail that go, it's a pretty long labyrinth trail between Park Trace and Willow Trace. Not a lot of people know about it. There's also a trail that goes all the way around the lake that is on TCRA common property that goes all the way back to Creekside that is our property as well, and it's a beautiful ride or walk. And we have all these really cool amenities, but people don't know about it. And it blew my mind, Greg Williams, who's like the kingpin of all things HOA, and said he'd never been on our cart path before. So we all have access to it. We all pay to maintain it. And so we need to do a better job of making sure that we have these common area facilities, because when we are selling our homes and marketing our homes on the MLS, like, these are things that should be marketable. It's all common areas. If you look at some of these newer neighborhoods, they're posting their basketball courts and their pools and their community gardens and all these awesome, wonderful communal facilities. And we have those. They're just dated. They're not maintained. They're not marketed. Most people don't know about it. There's signs that are covered in rust, moss, and bird poop. And no one really knows heads or tails of how that's supposed to work, but these are really good amenities that can really help market our area. It was one of the coolest parts when we moved here, and somebody told me about it, but we have neighbors that don't even know it exists. So I know it kind of sounds weird that we have to like market to ourselves and sell ourselves and our own amenities that we've had, but just, it's something that's kind of fallen to the wayside. And to bring it up to Paul's point further, I mean, we all win, but I think we need to assess and say, hey, how can we add more of these type of common area amenities so that we can all use that? Because driving down in beautiful weather through these trails, it's fantastic. And in late July, there's these like just thousands of fireflies on this trail by this creek. And it is one of the prettiest, most surreal things you'll ever see. And it's right here in our backyard. We own that property. We can just walk to see something like that. So we got to start really taking advantage of the opportunities that we have for these facilities that we literally have all the infrastructure and the money to capitalize on.
A map? A map. Okay.
Is there another question?
I'm a little confused about you calling it a cart path. I've lived here for almost 30 years. I always thought it was walking trail.
Which neighborhood are you in?
Park Trace.
Park Trace? Yeah, so it's a,
They put bollards out here.
yeah, so it's for golf, it's for golf carts as well as a walking trail. So the poles that are up there are to prevent vehicles from going on it.
That's not the intent that it was there for. It's not a cart path.
Park Trace was actually the first golf cart neighborhood in the area. It was marketed as such.
We, not too long ago, had that discussion, and it came up, and I actually spent a Saturday afternoon and went around and took a picture of all the signs that are posted on the, we'll call it the path, right? It specifically addresses golf carts, motorized vehicles, and a couple of other things. And some of those signs I took pictures of, they may have been here for 30 years, I have no idea. Several of them, though, over coming in from Park Trace were like brand new signs. And so, you know, there was some discussion about that. And, you know, it leads to Hoover High School out of the back of Willow Trace. And on any given afternoon, in my semi-retirement, if I cruise up that way, I mean, you may have 10 or 12, you know, golf carts parked there from kids that are, you know, go to school out the back of our neighborhood, and, you know, Park Trace right up through there. And so it's a very, very nice asset to have for connecting these neighborhoods. And I would hope, you know, that we can get this going. There's also an issue out there, and I had no idea about it until Alex had this crazy little tool on his phone that can identify who owns what and property lines and so on and so forth. But there are walking trails that we have that you would need a hazmat suit to get down. And we need to readdress that as a board and clean some of these up because they're beautiful if you could just get through them. And I'm not sure what it would take, the dollars, but it would be something that that would be one of the initiatives that I would bring up with the cart path investment, that we also invest in cleaning up these hiking trails, making them safe and enjoyable for, you know, the neighborhoods again, because they're a mess. That's all I can say.
I looked on some, to piggyback from Mark's point, I was looking through some Google Earth archive photos, and you can see about 20-ish years ago, you can clearly see where these trails run through the woods, which are trails for all of us to use. There's signage on them, there's easement access points, all that. Now, these are not the golf cart and or walking path. These are completely separate nature trails, and I've talked to residents who've been here for a longer time, and they said they used to love going on those trails. So it's just, those are amenities that we all have that are good. I mean, it's a beautiful area. It's something that we can market. Now, let me ask a question that you were kind of bringing up too. Were the golf carts on that path bothersome for you?
I think for the most part, they're respectful when I've been out walking with my kids or whatever, the dogs pull aside, you know, so that the pedestrians or walkers get by. So I don't, it's not an issue, but I think what I have an issue with was calling it a cart path when it can actually, it didn't start that way. It used to be like, it's different walking trail.
Yeah, and the covenants have stated that the golf carts are allowed on them.
Yeah.
So,
I don't have any issue with that at all. I just want to.
yeah, and the signage addresses it, and like I said, the poles were to prevent vehicles from going on, because I've heard horror stories of people actually driving cars and things back there. But if it's something where like it is a problem where, hey, we got paths driving too fast, or I'm trying to walk my dog or my kids and these carts are running me off, it may be something, hey, do we need to expand it and have a walking lane or a passing lane to make sure that everybody wins? But we need to hear all of the feedback for what makes the most sense, because like I said, it's everybody's communal area. We need to make sure that it's designed in a way that it's for everybody, whether it be walking, karting, or whatever.
The community has definitely grown where there's so many golf carts, and it's needed because you can go to all these close by amenities, you know, the restaurants, and, you know, the schools and whatever. So I think it's
But for people who want to walk, it's important too. I mean, you know, we want to make sure everybody, because I take my dogs back there all the time. It's a beautiful trail, and I need to be walking on it more, as you can see. But thanks for the chuckle out there. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of feedback that would be useful, and to kind of go to Paul's point, expanding those type of resources for other places as well.
Well, thank you, candidates. Let's give them another round of applause, please. Great job, guys. Well, thank you to our candidates for taking the time this evening to share your thoughts and vision for Trace Crossings. We appreciate your willingness to volunteer and contribute to the leadership of this community. We really do. Thank you also to the homeowners who attended tonight. Your participation and engagement are vital to keeping Trace Crossings a great place to live. As a reminder, there are 5 open board positions on the board of directors and 6 running this year. Ballots and voting instructions were sent out last week in accordance with our association's election schedule. On behalf of Trace Crossings Residential Association and the board, thank you again for being part of this process, for your continued support of our community. One last thing, have a great evening, and don't forget to vote.
And I'll just add one quick thing, sorry. Most of us are probably going to stay around afterwards, so if you have any questions, feel free to come up and ask us. All right, thank you.
Thank you.